Hello and welcome back to another riveting episode of the Passing Through podcast. I've committed the cardinal sin of eating a milk product before recording this episode. I was having a hankering for yogurt, but not yogurt that you get in a cup and a spoon and you eat like a civilized human being. It's more of a go-gurt kind of thing where you just have some kind of liquidy yogurt poured into a plastic bottle with some kind of semi-healthy packaging that leads you to believe that you're making a healthy choice as you gulp down nourishing probiotics and fermented organic animal milks and somehow feel that you are doing something good for yourself and the world. This is what I did just now. I walked into a grocery store and I saw this bottle just shining behind the frosty glass, and I couldn't help but reach in and grab it. And upon drinking it, I realized I was completely deceived by the marketing, and it was just basically sugar water mixed with milk, and it was disgusting. And now my mouth is making all kinds of clicking and sticking sounds. I'm just going to lean into the microphone right now and give you a blast of ASMR grotesque mouth sounds. Watch this. This is going to be a quick episode. I don't have so much time. I'm in a new place. We're finally in Italy. We've been here for a week. And it's gorgeous. It's like summer here. We're walking around in t-shirts. Some days I'm even shirtless, out in the field, swinging a scythe. And it's maybe the most manly that I've ever looked in my life. And I can't believe the weather. Right now in the van at night, it's the first week of November, and I'm almost sweating. That's how warm it is. We were hiking today up in the mountains. We're in the north of Italy, near the Alps, and it's just incredible beauty. It was like we were looking out over an ocean of shark fins or dolphin fins or some kind of colossal ancient megafish, a school of them that were just rippling and dancing all out below where we were. It was really something. I had never seen so many mountains and valleys and hills, and it's fall now, so the colors were just gorgeous. Orange and yellows and reds and greens, and some trees were bare, and the sun was just right. The sky was just clear enough. All the way in the distance, out on the horizon, we could see the sea. And the sea was out there just shimmering, glistening like a sheet of ice out on the furthest reaches of the horizon. It was really spectacular, and I had forgotten how beautiful Italy is. And for this episode, I captured some ambient sounds of where we're staying, as I try to do to give you, my dear listeners, a peek into the sounds, into the experiences, into what's going on, and all these places that I pass through. So in the background of this episode, you'll probably be hearing sounds of the river that runs through this property. There's a beautiful river full of birds and trees and falling leaves because it's that time of year. It doesn't feel that way. It's so warm, which is frightening, but the upside is that it's November and I can be hanging out by a river, even jumping into the river, and it's not too cold. So when I was recording the sounds that you're hearing in the background, not those sounds, but the sounds that you're hearing in the background of just gentle water gurgling, the occasional rustling of wind, bird song, and what to me was really beautiful, and I wonder how it will sound on a recording, is the sound of falling leaves brushing up against other leaves or tree bark and gently sailing down onto the surface of the water and just swimming along down the river like little ships. So just imagine that. A warm, sunny Italian hillside up in the Alps with the river and trees and leaves and wind and birds and just a calm, tranquil, gentle atmosphere. That's what you're going to have in the background because that's what you need, because Donald fucking Trump just won the election again. It's not shocking. It's not some big surprise. In fact, this was something that I've been predicting for months. His campaign ran a platform that was tapping into the feelings of Americans. Not their minds, but their hearts. Donald Trump spilled his blood for the American people. He got an incredible photo op. He was arrested for the people. There was the photo of his mugshot. There was a series of images that were very iconic from this year that really spoke to people's hearts. Most recently, when he was in a fucking McDonald's pretending to work, they closed down the entire McDonald's. And he went in there for a photo op and a video op, handing out French fries and burgers at the drive-thru. Genius political campaigning. You know, Americans like burgers. They like McDonald's. You know, give the people what they want. Because in general, people remember how you make them feel. They may not remember the things that you did or said. They may not remember your 34 felonies. They may not remember how you led an insurrection after you lost the previous election. They may not remember all of the heinous things that you did over your previous term, the multiple impeachments, the entire laundry list of atrocities Trump was responsible for. But they do remember how he made them feel. And he made them feel safe. He made them feel seen. He made them feel protected. He made them feel that they were important. And he made himself relatable to them. So I think what I've been seeing a lot of online right now is a lot of condemnation from liberal Democrats. And I never saw the distinction so clearly before between liberal Democrats and leftists as I have now in the aftermath of this election. Because the liberal talking points are all about condemnation and blame. They want to attack people who didn't vote for Kamala. They want to attack people who voted third party. They want to attack people who abstained. They want to blame everyone except for themselves. Because that's a harder thing to do, right? It's hard to look into the mirror and see that the DNC put up a flawed candidate with an abysmal platform, which to me seemed to hinge around the premise that this candidate isn't Donald Trump, effectively giving people something to vote against instead of inspiring them and actually energizing them and getting them excited to vote for progressive policies. And if you do that, if you put up a candidate who is merely just a kind of foil to the other candidate, it's not really compelling people to go out and vote. If it isn't touching their hearts, if it isn't inspiring them. I mean, just for an example, I remember back in the day when I voted for Obama's first term. I was young. I was living in New York still. This was the first election I was really passionate about because I was starting to come of age at that point and pay attention to politics and care about things. And in the aftermath of Bush's presidency, there felt like there was an urgent need for change, for reform, for the betterment of the nation, I guess. And the prospect of the first black president who seemed to be tapping into the needs and values and hopes and dreams of a people, I remember being really captivated and mesmerized, and I wanted to vote for this candidate because I wanted the future that he seemed to be promising. And a lot of my friends did. A lot of young people did. And people went out in record numbers and voted, and it felt like we made a difference. It felt like we were doing something important. We can table the discussion about how, when you look back at his presidency, he didn't really do the things that he said. He expanded drilling and oil. He was the president who started signing off all the drone strikes. He didn't close Guantanamo. And when I look back on his policies, I don't really feel good about that president. You know, he looked good. He talked good. He had the illusion of doing good things. But really, there are quite a few glaring problems surrounding his presidency. But that's an entirely separate conversation. Coming back to the present, in 2024, Kamala Harris's election it lacked that quality. And furthermore, it really seemed to ignore and alienate and estrange the base. Because when you have people protesting in the streets, interrupting her rallies, her speeches, with pleas and cries to end the genocide, to stop arming Israel. And she responds by saying, "I'm speaking." To me, that was one of the moments where I realized, holy fuck, they're really going to give this election over to Trump. Because it signified not just a kind of cold indifference, not just a kind of smug, condescending, out of touch remark, but to say to your constituents, "I'm speaking," also says that I'm not listening. And this was a really key moment. It's really telling to me. And that's where the blame lies, in my opinion. They had a poor candidate with a poor platform, and they strategized poorly, and they didn't listen to what their base wanted. And so they didn't get the votes. And that's how elections should work, right? On the one hand, you can acknowledge that Trump becoming the president is not good. It spells disaster for Ukrainians, for Palestinians, for women, for minorities, for trans people. For the environment is a huge one for me. So for humans and non-humans, the damage that a Trump presidency will unleash is huge. And that's really unfortunate. And what angers me the most about that is that the Democrats had years to prepare for this and strategize and come up with a winning platform and listen to the base and get people to mobilize. And instead they kind of did none of that. They were just pushing Biden through for another term while he's showing clear signs of mental decline. And at the last minute, they just switch and pivot and unilaterally decide that Kamala is going to be the candidate. And it just seemed like a scramble right before the election to get everything in place. And yeah, it's kind of like when you're rushing to complete your homework assignment right before the deadline, and you're just kind of throwing a Hail Mary there at the end, hoping that things work out. And this time it didn't. And to me, this should be a message to Democrats, to liberals, to anyone who opposes a right-wing conservative platform, that they're going to need to be more progressive. They're going to need to actually excite their voters. They're going to need to offer something that's compelling if they want to win another election. But I don't want to talk about politics. It's just something that's been on my mind. There's something sad and symbolic and also fitting about Trump winning, because how much more emblematic of America is it to have a literal billionaire, real estate tycoon, sexual abuser, lying, narcissistic felon trumping a prosecutor. That's the story that plays out in America all the time. The rich and powerful cheating the law and justice. And Trump is quintessentially that. And so him winning this election really speaks to the mythology of the United States. They got the president that they deserved. And it's going to be a hard thing for America and the world. And it hurts me. I'm sad about it. Because for me, this was perhaps the most important election of my lifetime. And the best that Western American democracy could muster was Donald Trump or a cop. So I wanted to quickly pivot and just talk about what happened in between Hungary and Italy, where I am now. There was a last-minute opportunity to attend a community building workshop in Budapest to help co-facilitate it. So myself and Asha, my partner, we joined the team over there, and we worked on a beautiful community building workshop there. For 4 days we were there, and it was just a really important workshop for me, because I've only been on team a handful of times now. And each time there are a lot of learnings to capture, because it's a really strange process, this community building thing. I would encourage you to go back, if you haven't listened to it, and check out the episode with Edward Grudy. He's the kind of head facilitator of this process right now. And he's our mentor, and he's the one that we're trying to learn and soak up as much as we can from, because as far as I've seen so far, he's the most masterful facilitator out there right now. He's been doing it for decades, and he knows how to say things. He's got an arsenal of stories. He can improvise. He has great wit and insight. He's very observant. He's just overall naturally suited to do what he does. So working with him is just a joy to watch him, and it's great to just see him work his magic. But for me, what I started to realize about this process is that it's really strange how it works. Because what you're doing when you're there is you're sitting in a circle with strangers, and silence is used. So you're kind of meditating. It's like a group contemplative practice. This is how I've heard him describe it. And you're there, and you're trying to sense in your body for what's happening. And when I was there this time, I'm sitting there in the circle, and over the days I started to notice that tension and stress and some kind of energy is just beginning to accumulate on an energetic level in my body. And in those moments of silence, it's tricky, because I'm responsible for checking in with myself and seeing what's happening inside of me, but I'm also responsible for holding space with the group. So it's a very draining, both mentally and emotionally, process. And when I was there, I was realizing that when I'm doing that, when I'm sitting there and feeling what's happening inside, maybe it's my heart is beating a little bit harder, maybe my palms are sweaty, maybe there's heat on the back of my neck, maybe my stomach is starting to feel like it's in knots, maybe I'm shaking a little bit, like I'm cold, maybe I'm flushed. Some physiological thing is happening in my body, and if I start to chase it, if I start to hunt it and feel what's happening and pursue it, all of that is happening in a weird place. It isn't entirely physical. It's happening in a place that's also very imaginal, I would call it. Because if we understand the mind and the body to be a unity, if it isn't a duality, right? We're not this separate thing where it's mind and body. They are one thing. They influence each other. They're connected. And in those moments of group contemplation, where I'm checking in with myself and seeing what's going on, the thing that bridges the gap between that illusion of separation of mind and body is some kind of imaginal process. Because literally what it feels like to me is I'm sitting there and I'll have a sensation. And if I close my eyes and sink into it, I'm suddenly in a world that is just shimmering and teeming with activity. It feels as though I'm inside of a forest or a jungle, and I'm actually hunting something, I'm pursuing it, because there's a sensation that I'm after, and it's kind of elusive, it kind of wants to hide, it's not sure if it wants to come out. So it requires some effort. It's an active process from me to go in and uncover what's going on and capture it. And so I'm stalking something through this liminal, imaginal realm in a way that kind of feels like a strange kind of self-shamanism or something like that, where I'm in my body and I'm in my feelings, but I'm not in my body because I'm in some kind of space that doesn't really exist, but it does exist because it's phenomenological and it's felt and it's real. And if I can actually maneuver myself through that space and get my hands on what it is and witness the thing that's in there that wants to be seen but doesn't, it's all strange and paradoxical and very mystical, but when it happens, there's also a very pronounced change in the body. Like the feeling will generally intensify. And what happened to me this time was it was intensifying and I was resisting it because I was trying to be present for the group and hold the space and be ready to intervene if necessary and just make observations and check in with the other facilitators. And it requires a surprising amount of energy to do this. And I was wrestling with this issue where I was feeling overwhelmed by my own process. And I was trying to be present for the group process simultaneously. So I was shutting myself down. And this has been a pattern for me in previous workshops, where I really grappled with how do I take my facilitator hat off and be present for the group. And this time, it was as though I didn't have a choice. You know, it felt like I was nauseated, like I had eaten something or I had drunk too much alcohol, and I just started to feel that green feeling in my stomach. And whatever was in there that wanted to come up, it was coming up. And I felt it in my chest. I felt it going up into my throat. I felt it really clenching my teeth and holding it there. And my whole body was just trying to push it out and expel it. And I was only able to do this maybe 2-3 times before I just couldn't anymore. And that was the strange thing, because there's this concept inside of community building which is called being moved to speak. And I literally felt moved. Like it wasn't me who was trying to say this thing. It was something. It was some kind of spirit, some kind of energy, some kind of force that was literally passing through me to come out into the group space. And that's where things get even more psychedelic, is because it's a group contemplative practice. I start to lose my sense of individuality when I'm in that space. And the thing that comes through a lot of times, and it was true this time, is something that's important for the group to witness, something that the group needs to help it sink deeper into the collective group process. And so what happened was I was sitting there and the dam broke, and all of a sudden I just start sharing, and I'm talking about how I feel so conflicted and I feel a sense of shame and guilt because I don't want to be talking right now. This is the group's process, and I feel like I'm taking up time and it's not my place to share. And this is really conflicted in me because I know I'm moved to speak. I'm powerfully moved right now. I'm overwhelmed with emotions. You know, I'm sitting there crying, and I could barely speak. It's like my voice was choked. And that was what the body was trying to teach me as well, because the whole topic was that I wasn't allowing myself to speak. I was choking the words down. I was censoring myself. I was suppressing myself. And this is something that I wrestle with on this podcast when I do interviews. I often want to intervene, to interrupt, to say something, to add something, to ask a question. But the insecure part of me, the nervous part of me, the part of me that wants to be accepted, that wants to belong, that wants people to like me, wants to be respectful, and it doesn't want to interrupt. And it thinks, okay, let me just give space and I'll come back to what it was. And doing this routinely over and over starts to cultivate an atmosphere of inhibition, feeling generally uncomfortable, lacking confidence, lacking assertiveness. And the odd thing is that it's well-intentioned, right? It comes from a place of trying to make someone else feel comfortable, give them enough space, give them attention, give them the conversational care that they need to feel safe and comfortable so that they open up. And this is a good thing, but I think when it's imbalanced, as it may be in my case, it stifles my own ability to play, to improvise, to joke, to feel free, to feel at ease. And that lack of safety or comfort does damage over time. And just having this realization on a physical level, on an emotional level, on a kind of complete, unified mind-body level, and speaking that truth into the circle where it just goes out and it hangs there like a cloud in the middle of the circle. It affects people, right? It's like a cloud that rains down. You could see people crying, people sniffling, people reaching for tissues because they know that pain. People know what it feels like to feel afraid to speak out, to feel uncomfortable showing themselves, to feel that what they say is unimportant. Because that's what I was saying. I was saying when I speak, I feel like what I'm going to say is unimportant. It's stupid, it's boring, it's a waste of someone's attention. And I think people know those feelings. And by sharing something like that and giving people something to connect to, something real, something authentic, something painful, this kind of secret sorrow that we keep, it introduces a kind of fire or a kind of heat into the room, and it facilitates transformation. After it happened, there were numerous people who came up to me and said, wow, thank you for sharing. I'm a facilitator in different modalities, and I always wrestle with how much to share, how to be present, how to be authentic. And what you did was really inspiring. I feel like I can do something like that now too, because all I have to do is speak the truth. And to me, it was really touching to realize, wow, I helped several people with this. And those are just the people that felt comfortable enough to come up to me. And then there's the whole group process, where saying something like that opens up people to be similarly vulnerable. And yeah, it was just so important and psychedelic. And there was a funny thing that happened where before that day, we went out as a facilitator team to just have a bite one night by chance. It wasn't anything we planned, it just happened. And when we went to the restaurant, when I was leaving, I realized that I lost my hat. And I went back into the restaurant to try to find it, and they said it was gone, which was strange because I had just left the restaurant. But in any case, they said they didn't have the hat. And so it was lost. And I didn't realize until I was driving away later, after we had finished the workshop and we were going to Italy, that there was an eerie symbolism in that. That maybe this synchronicity was trying to whisper something to me, that it was foreshadowing something. It was saying that this was going to be the workshop where I was going to take off this facilitator hat and actually learn how to do that dance. And I think learning that within the context of a group process really accelerates learning how to do that in my own process, with my own inner group. Because I believe that we aren't these individual things. We aren't this isolated individual entity. I subscribe to the IFS notion. And IFS, for those of you who may not know, is internal family systems. It's a pretty amazing psychotherapeutic modality which asserts that we are a collection of parts. So imagine you're made up of a team trying to play a sport, or a bunch of musicians in an orchestra trying to play a song. And if those parts aren't in harmony, if they're not cooperating, if they aren't working together well, you have discord, you have a lack of harmony, you have a losing, frustrated team. And so community needs to be built not just with others, but with our internal community. And so doing that in the group helps me in my own personal process, and then my personal process helps the group process. And so it creates this really interesting, synergistic kind of harmonizing. And yeah, I just wanted to share that because it was something that was on my mind, and I don't find that I speak much about community building in these solo episodes, even though it's something that's an important part of my worldview right now. We're actually going to Bratislava next week to go help facilitate a session where we're training facilitators. So I'm getting deeper into this process where I'm not only helping to facilitate workshops with people who are interested in this method, but now I'm helping to facilitate facilitators, which is great. And it's amazing that I can be a part of this. And to me, it's really a movement. It's a really important thing that I think humanity needs right now. So that I can play a role, it's something I'm really grateful for. And I hope to speak more about it as I maybe collect my thoughts and write some stuff, because right now this is just a scattered episode where I'm in the van before dinner and I was able to eke out a quick one here. Yeah, so stay tuned for more of that. And in the interest of time, because it's almost over here, I wanted to just leave you with an eco tip, which is something that I'm inspired by at this eco village that we're at. Because there's no toilet paper here. And you might hear that and go, what? That's disgusting. What do you do? How do you wipe your ass? Do you use a seashell? Are you Sylvester Stallone in the movie Demolition Man? No. But I am someone who has been recently converted to the bidet. Yes, the bidet. The bidet. Why live in a world where you literally kill trees to turn them into paper to wipe shit off of your dirty anus in the bathroom after you've eaten a greasy Big Mac and fries from McDonald's, when you can have a glorious spritz of H2O nestling into your sphincter as it cleanses, hydrates, gently exfoliates, and does the same job that toilet paper does, but without killing the trees. So my eco tip this week comes fresh from an eco village, and it's try switching to a bidet. Eliminate toilet paper. You don't need it. And some of you might say, yeah, sure, but you're still using a resource. You're using water. You're using electricity to power the bidet. So isn't that kind of a wash? And yes, it is a wash. It is a glorious wash for your butthole. It is, your anus will be sparkling. So just let that marinade. Let it simmer. Let it steep. And think about it. No more needless wasting of paper when you could just give your sphincter a spritz and keep it glimmering, keep it clean, keep it shiny. That's the eco tip. As always, be good to one another, and I will try to talk to you next week. I'm not making any promises. It might be the week after because, as I mentioned, I'm going to be in Bratislava, so I predict I won't have much time.